I never thought my own brother would smash a champagne bottle against my head just because I said no. Blood was running down my face, and everyone just stood there silent. That night changed everything. When my brother attacked me in front of a crowd, I thought that was the end. Instead, it was the beginning of a fight that would change my life forever. Before starting this story, if you are listening from USA, please leave a comment with number 9. And if you are from another country, please leave the name of your lovely country. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to listen to more stories. I didn't see the bottle coming. 1 second. I was turning to leave the rooftop garden, my heels clicking softly on the stone tiles. And the next, there was a deafening crack against the back of my skull. A warm gush trickled down my neck, and for a moment, everything around me spun lights, faces, laughter frozen mid-breath. My knees buckled. I dropped the envelope in my hand. It fluttered to the ground like some meaningless scrap, while the world around me erupted into screams, but I didn't scream. Not when I collapsed in front of the 20 or so guests who'd gathered to celebrate my brother's 35th birthday. Not when I saw my mother's face twist into something between panic and shame. Not even when I saw Theo, my older brother, the man who had just shattered a champagne bottle over my head, stand there, chest heaving, holding the jagged neck of the bottle like a weapon still warm from its strike. Blood was pooling onto the neckline of my dress, a gift from myself to celebrate closing on the condo just 2 months earlier. He had yelled something. I remember his mouth moving, spit flying from his lips, something about betrayal, about selfishness, about me stealing what was his. His voice was hoarse, but not with grief, with rage. Everyone stood frozen. No one moved. And in that silence, so loud it rang in my ears, I realized 2 things. First, that this wasn't just a moment of lost temper. This was a declaration, a violent, public claim that I, the younger sister, the quiet one who kept her distance, had crossed some invisible line. And second, that no one, not my parents, not his friends, not even the aunt who used to braid my hair when I was little, no one rushed to my side. I pulled myself up, dazed, trembling, dress soaked in crimson and champagne. My eyes scanned the crowd, looking not for comfort, but for confirmation. And I found it. No one looked surprised. I wasn't the guest of honor. I was the sacrifice. A paramedic asked me questions I couldn't process. My head throbbed with a white-hot ache, my ears ringing. But inside that chaos, something else had begun to pulse, quietly but steadily. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to run. I was going to make sure Theo remembered this night not as the night he silenced me, but as the night he gave me permission to fight back. Growing up in the town of Belmere, tucked between faded hills and stubborn traditions, I learned early what it meant to be invisible. My brother, Theo, was the son of our household. Loud, charismatic, reckless, and always forgiven. When he got suspended from school for fighting, my mother blamed the other boy. When he crashed my father's old Ford into a ditch at 16, my parents called it a learning experience. They never made him apologize, never made him fix it. They just replaced the truck without a word of consequence. Me, I was the quiet one, the helper, the girl who didn't ask for seconds at dinner, the one who cleaned the kitchen while Theo got praised for remembering to feed the dog. I wasn't beaten, I wasn't locked away, but I was denied in subtler, crueler ways through silence, through comparison, through the absence of pride where I had so desperately hoped for it. When I brought home straight A's, my father asked why I wasn't more involved in sports like Theo. When I got into the state science fair, my mother forgot to attend. But when Theo failed a math exam and blamed the teacher, they demanded a meeting with the school board. It was as if my efforts existed in a vacuum, silent, unnoticed, irrelevant. By the time I was 15, I stopped trying. Not to succeed, no. I kept pushing myself, but to earn their attention. I realized their love came with conditions I would never meet, so I made myself a promise if they would not invest in me, I would invest in myself. At 17, I took a job at a local bakery, before school, after school, weekends. I saved every dollar. When Theo borrowed from my parents to take a trip to Florida, I used my savings to buy secondhand college textbooks 2 years early. I spent my lunch breaks reading about financial literacy, real estate, and contracts while Theo racked up unpaid parking tickets and bragged about it at family dinners. By 21, I graduated with honors and a double major. No celebration, no party, just a brief, lukewarm well, good for you from my father before he turned the conversation back to Theo's latest scheme. So I moved away. Belmere was never home. It was a place I endured. I relocated to Ashford, found a job at a firm that respected what I brought to the table, and started building a life where my worth didn't need to be explained. My peace was earned, not given. My strength was built, not inherited. I never looked back. Not because I had no memories, but because too many of them were filled with shadows I refused to live under any longer. I still remember the first time I turned the key to my new place. The building sat on a quiet street in the heart of Ashford's Arts District, nestled between a small cafe and a bookstore with ivy creeping up its stone facade. It wasn't extravagant, but it was mine bought with years of sacrifice. Student debt paid in full, and nights spent working late while others drank cocktails on rooftops. The condo was a one-bedroom with high ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows that caught the morning sun just right. I painted the walls myself, a soft shade of olive that reminded me of peace. Every corner was a declaration of independence. The kitchen wasn't big, but I filled it with copper pots I had collected from second-hand shops and a teapot from a trip I once took alone to the coast. It was the first place I had ever felt safe, fully myself. At first, I didn't tell my family. I didn't owe them that announcement. And deep down, I knew how it would be received. But news travels fast in small towns and even faster through family group chats. Within weeks, my mother called, voice high and clipped, asking why she had to hear from Aunt Sylvia that I had purchased some fancy apartment without telling anyone. I told her calmly it wasn't a secret, just not a conversation I needed to have. That was when the tone shifted. Suddenly, the subtle dismissiveness turned into sharp-edged remarks. Well, I suppose you think you're better than us now. It must be nice not to worry about others. And my favorite Theo could have used a leg up. But I guess not everyone remembers where they came from. Theo didn't call to congratulate me. Instead, he showed up unannounced one weekend, walked through my front door like he owned it, and scoffed at my minimalist decor. Looks like a hotel, he muttered. Cold, soulless. But I saw it for what it was. Jealousy disguised as criticism. Envy wearing the mask of concern. What stung wasn't the words, it was the realization that they didn't want me to rise. They wanted me to stay beneath them, where they were comfortable. They didn't see the years I scraped by. They didn't see the price I paid to stand where I stood. To them, it looked effortless. To me, it looked like freedom, and it was only the beginning. The invitation arrived folded neatly inside a card embossed with gold foil, Theo's 35th, a celebration of family, food, and fresh starts. It felt strange in my hands, formal, too polished for my family's usual thrown-together backyard cookouts, but I set it on my counter and stared at it for a long time. I hadn't been to a family event in nearly 2 years. After buying the condo, things between us had grown tense, brittle. Conversations felt like traps, but something about the wording fresh starts made me pause. Maybe they were finally ready to let go of old grudges. Maybe there was room for something better. I was cautious. But I went. Not out of sentiment, out of curiosity. The party was held at a rented event hall downtown, complete with a hired caterer, white linen tablecloths, and a violinist playing Vivaldi in the corner. It was so unlike anything we'd ever done. It bordered on surreal. My mother greeted me with an over-practiced smile, cheeks stiff. My father nodded but didn't hug me. Theo, in a crisp navy suit, played host like a local politician charming, laughing too loudly, clinking glasses. At first, things felt civil, even warm. Cousins I hadn't seen in years offered compliments, mentioned how grown-up I seemed, how put together. I thanked them, wondering who had briefed them. A few even asked about my condo. I answered politely, cautiously, my eyes scanning for the catch. It came during dinner. I was pulled aside by my father and Theo, led to a small side room under the pretense of needing help with a surprise toast. There, on the table, sat a stack of papers, legal documents, transfer of ownership forms, my condo, Theo's name already typed in bold across the top. "We just thought," my father began, "since you've been so successful, maybe it's time to think of the bigger picture, of family." Theo added, "It would just be temporary. On paper, helps with a few things on our end. You'd still live there." Of course. I felt my spine go cold. "No." They exchanged glances. My father leaned in, voice lower. "You're not being fair. Hazel, you've always had more than him." I laughed. Out loud. A sharp, bitter sound that echoed in the small room. "More than him," I said. "Are we rewriting history now?" My father's expression hardened. "You're being ungrateful." Theo crossed his arms. "We're just asking for a signature, not a limb." "No," I repeated, "and the fact that you thought I'd say yes? That's what really hurts." I turned to leave. That's when I noticed the door wasn't fully closed. Standing just outside was my mother, her face unreadable. She didn't speak, just turned and walked away. In that moment, I understood. This wasn't a party, it was a setup, and every smiling face, every glass raised in my direction, had been part of the illusion. They didn't want peace, they wanted possession. I stepped back into the main hall, my heels striking the floor like a metronome marking my rising pulse. The music had shifted to something softer, a lazy piano melody spilling from the speakers. People were laughing, sipping, unaware or pretending to be of what had just happened behind that closed door. I made it halfway to the exit before I heard Theo's voice behind me. Loud, sharp. "Hazel." I stopped. The room quieted. Conversations stalled mid-sentence. I turned slowly. Every eye now on me. He stormed toward me, eyes wild, cheeks flushed from wine or maybe fury, in his hand. He still held the unsigned documents, now creased and curled from his grip. "You think you're better than all of us?" he spat, "walking in here like some queen, like we owe you something." My jaw clenched, but I said nothing. I wasn't going to argue in front of strangers. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction. He kept coming. "You don't get to say no. You don't get to just walk away from your family." I took a step back, raising my voice just enough. "This isn't about family. This is about control. And I'm done letting you have any—" Gasps rippled through the crowd. My mother moved toward us, hesitated, then stopped. Theo's hand trembled for a moment. I thought he might throw the papers at me. Instead, he reached for a champagne bottle from a nearby table, half full, cold. "No one walks away from family," he said again, quieter now, the calm before the storm. Then, without warning, he swung. The bottle struck the side of my head with a sickening crack. Pain exploded through my skull. My knees gave out. I remember the floor rushing up, the feel of cool tile against my cheek, the metallic scent of blood mixing with citrus and alcohol. There were screams, distant, muffled, as though underwater. Feet shuffled. Someone shouted his name, but no one stopped him. No one caught me. I heard my own breath, shallow and wet. I remember thinking, not of the pain, but of the silence that followed, how easily they let it happen, how no one rushed to my side. Paramedics were called. I remember the flash of blue gloves, the sting of antiseptic, the cold of the gurney. But above all, I remember my mother standing in the doorway. She didn't cry. She didn't kneel. She just watched. And in that moment, something inside me broke cleanly, finally, and with perfect clarity. They had drawn first blood. Now it was my turn. The bruises faded, but the silence afterward spoke louder than any swelling ever could. No apology came. Not from Theo, not from my parents, not even a single message to check if I was healing. That silence hardened something in me. Grief turned to purpose. Shock crystallized into clarity. I wasn't going to be another woman who let her own family destroy her and walk away like nothing happened. So, I hired an attorney. Her name was Jordan Ellison, a sharp, composed woman in her 40s who listened more than she spoke. When I told her what happened, not just the assault, but the documents, the manipulation, the pattern of emotional coercion, she didn't flinch. "We're not just pressing charges for assault," she said calmly. "We're going to audit every inch of what they've done to you." And so we did. The deeper Jordan's team dug, the uglier the truth became. My name had been used on multiple credit applications without my consent. There were forged signatures, phony rental agreements, even a business license filed under my Social Security number. They had created an entire financial ghost of me to take out loans they never intended to repay. It wasn't just betrayal, it was fraud. Felony-level fraud. The case built itself. By the time we stepped into the courtroom, I was no longer the woman who collapsed on a polished tile floor. I was standing tall, spine straight, armed with binders of evidence and a calm fury that never once cracked. Theo sat across from me in a cheap suit, jaw tight, eyes darting, my parents beside him, fidgeting, their usual composure nowhere to be found. Their lawyer tried to spin it as a family misunderstanding, a paperwork mix-up, but the trail was too long, too detailed, and too deliberate. The prosecution laid it out piece by piece: forged documents, falsified applications, and a clear pattern of deceit stretching back over 3 years. Each exhibit landed like a hammer, but the checkmate came when Jordan presented the deed to my parents' home, half owned by me. They had used my credit, my signature, my records, and in doing so, they had unknowingly granted me legal leverage over their most sacred possession. The judge ruled in my favor: restitution, formal transfer of my property back under my name, and pending investigations into the misuse of my identity. As we walked out of the courthouse, reporters tried to swarm, but I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Justice doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes. It arrives in quiet victories: court papers signed, ownership restored, reputations shattered. They had underestimated me. They thought I was the quiet one, the one who would fold. But that day in court, I didn't just reclaim what was mine. I proved, without raising my voice, that survival wasn't weakness, it was strategy, and they had finally played the wrong game and lost. The courtroom battle was won, but the real victory was mine alone. As the gavel came down, the weight of years of pain and betrayal lifted just a little. I didn't celebrate with loud cheers or public displays. Instead, I found peace in silence, a quiet affirmation that I had taken back control of my life. It wasn't about revenge. I had no desire to ruin my family beyond what justice required. What I wanted was freedom from their control, their expectations, and the ghosts that haunted my past. I wanted to reclaim my life on my own terms, without bitterness or resentment weighing me down. Forgiveness didn't come easily. It wasn't a sudden gift, but a slow, deliberate choice. I forgave myself first, for the guilt I had carried for so long, the guilt of not being enough for them, of walking away, of standing firm in the face of betrayal. I realized that forgiving them didn't mean forgetting or excusing. It meant letting go of the bitterness that threatened to consume me. I refused to become a prisoner of their mistakes or let their actions define my future. With the settlement, I made 2 decisions that surprised even me. First, I established college funds for Theo's children. They were innocent in all of this, and I wanted them to have opportunities I never had growing up. It was a gesture of hope, not reconciliation, a way of breaking the cycle of hardship and entitlement that had shadowed our family for years. Second, I anonymously donated a significant portion of the proceeds to a local domestic violence shelter. Their stories echoed mine, and I wanted to help others find their way out of darkness and despair, just as I had. In the months that followed, I rebuilt more than just my finances. I rebuilt trust with myself. I surrounded myself with friends who valued me, found a therapist who helped me heal, and returned to passions I had long ignored, reclaiming pieces of my identity lost in the chaos. I spoke at financial empowerment workshops, sharing my story not for pity, but as a testament to resilience and strength. Every woman in those rooms reminded me that success is not just about money or status, but about reclaiming your voice and your dignity. The scars on my head have faded, but they remain a reminder not of pain, but of strength, a symbol of the night I was silenced and the life I refused to let go. My family history ended the moment violence entered the picture, but my story, it was just beginning. And now, it's mine to write, on my own terms, with courage and hope. This story is a powerful reminder that sometimes the hardest battles we face come from those closest to us. It teaches us the importance of standing firm in our truth, setting clear boundaries, and choosing self-respect over toxic loyalty. Success is not just about financial gain, it's about reclaiming your voice and your peace, even when surrounded by betrayal and pain. This story is a work of fiction created for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to attack or defame any individual, family, or organization. Any resemblance to real persons or events is purely coincidental. If this story moved you or sparked a thought, please let us know by commenting below. Your likes, shares, and subscriptions help us create more stories that inspire and entertain. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching and being part of our community.